Big news today. Blackrock Mountain's official release was stated to be April 2nd. Be sure to tune in then. I will complete the adventures ASAP, of course, and start my mad scientist deck creation. I really look forward to the new cards. Speaking of new cards, today, along with that announcement, there were the dragons. We finally see some dragons. And I gotta say, these dragons are pretty tough to evaluate. First one's up is Volcanic Drake. 6 mana, 6/4. Obviously, 6 mana, 6/4 is quite bad. 5 mana, 5/4 is bad. Is a 4 mana, 6/4 good? That hasn't been printed yet. But we have 4 mana, 5/4s, which are never a run, the Plane Striders. So I'm going to kind of establish that arbitrarily, I think if this were cast on 4, it would be like average. If it were cast on 3 or 2, it would be really good. So in order to cast your Volcanic Drake, what deck does it even go in? So here are a few things. You have the Unleash into Volcanic Drake combo, which is especially good, the discount mechanic, because unlike Cult Master Unleash, which requires 7 mana, it's possible that you can get the Volcanic Drake on just 3 mana. Like, imagine the scenario where you're up against Paladin, they play Muster for Battle, you play your Unleash the Hounds, and then you trade in your 3 dogs into their 3 guys, and then you play a Volcanic Drake, and it's like, bam, 6/4, that's insane. Always gotta watch out for these cards which can cost less for each minion that died, or cost less, because they're the ones that tend to be abused in some way. Mountain Giant, Molten Giant, Clockwork Giant was never a really good one. Sea Giant was played sometimes. Volcanic Drake is a card that I feel hopeful for. When I first saw it, I wasn't very impressed because I was like, oh, it's kind of like Dragon's Breath, which I, again, still think is bad. But Volcanic Drake is much better than Dragon's Breath because it's a lot more unfair. A 0 mana deal 4 damage. A 0 mana 6/4, that's something. It also is out of BGH range. This is gonna shake things up, and you play your Consecration into your Drake, you play your Pyro Equality into your Drake, you Hellfire into Drake. There's a lot of decks that this can go into. PS, Twisting Nether is still not a thing. It doesn't even have to be AoE. You play cards like Unleash or Muster with the Volcanic Drake. In Arena, it's a little bit harder to evaluate the card, but I suspect that it will be good. Draconid Crusher. This card is bad, I think. It suffers much the same problem as how would a card that's just big but slow do. Fel Reaver is a card which is a 5 mana 8/8, which I ran in super aggressive decks before, and it just turned out that a 5 mana 8/8 wasn't good enough because I've got the Fel Reaver in my sights, I've got the fun in my sights. At least it can be a 6 mana 6/6, but it's like, you don't want to play that. Basically, the card is bad. If it was always a 6 mana 9/9, I don't think it would even be played. That's a little shocking to say, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, in a world where those handlocks go 4 mana 8/8, like, you do a 6 mana 9/9, it just hardly seems that good. In Arena, though, this card is really, really good. Boulder Fist Ogre is good. I actually don't think this card is necessarily better than Boulder Fist. A 6 mana 6/6 would be pretty good in Arena already. And the big guy himself, Nefarian. Boy, this one is really hard to say whether or not it's good. The first comparison many people make right off the bat is Ysera is a 9 mana dragon. 4/12 versus 8/8, the 4/12 is better. Ysera basically gives you a spell, a card immediately also, a random card out of 5 cards, but those cards tend to be pretty good. Nefarian, you add 2 random spells in. You can look through the spell list, there's a lot of garbage out there, but there are a lot of good cards also. So I decided that the way to think about this is perhaps more like Ancient of Lore, or like Neptulon. So Ancient of Lore, 7 mana 5/5, draw 2 cards. Is adding 2 random spells to your hand from your opponent's class better than drawing 2 cards? No, I'm gonna say it's a little bit worse, but it's not that much worse. Is it better than adding 4 random Murlocs to your hand? And Neptulon is, by the way, actually 10 mana, kind of technically. probably better than adding 4 random Murlocs to your hand. Although it's not even necessarily. And it's a dragon, so that's a thing. Like, it's possible that you don't even have to include either Ysera or Nefarian in your deck. Maybe in a dragon deck you run both. Is that insane? It might be insane. There are a lot of people who have said stuff along the lines of, wow, you can get such awesome stuff. Force of Nature, Savage Roar. You're playing against a handlock. They actually don't run very many spells. You get their Sacrificial Pact. They play Jiraxes. I don't want to make another Dr. Boom mistake where I say like the card isn't going to be played, and it's a dragon in a set where dragons matter. But it sure seems like this card costs too much mana for what it does. I think this time I'm going to be right. Consider this my very hesitant call that Nefarian will not be played even though there's a dragon theme going on. Because I don't think you can actually run both Nefarian and Ysera. And this time there's actual comparable things to run it, to compare it to. Like you can compare it to the Neptulon, which is 10 mana 7/7, adding 4 Murlocs. Is that better than adding 2 random spells? Okay, when you compare it that way, I'm a little scared to call Nefarian bad. Because, like, Neptulon, if it was neutral, I think it would be tempting to run it in a few decks. And it's not really 10 mana, it's 7+3, which is different than 9. You know what I really like, though? I like cards that give you cards. It's awesome. I want more cards that give you cards. Card advantage is great. Maybe easier is to take a brief detour and think about Arena, where this card is pretty good, because it does give you a huge guy, and part of the joy of playing Arena is that your guy doesn't get BGH'd. And then you get your 2 card advantage also. I expect it to be a pretty good Arena card. That's what I said about Dr. Boom too. So it makes me scared. Obviously Nefarian is going to have a higher chance of seeing play when you're playing a dragon deck. But will a dragon deck actually be able to run all the big dragons? And isn't Ysera better? I think yes, and therefore I think Nefarian gets the boot. Very sad. Anyways, given that Blackrock Mountain is getting released on April 2nd, look forward to seeing you all there then, and there's probably going to be a lot more cards released very rapidly soon then, I would imagine. So having the whole picture is going to make it a lot easier to see what's going on. These revealed dragons support a control deck. Probably most exciting is that Volcanic Drake, which you AoE them, and then you actually get an advantage. A big problem with Area of Effect was that you play your Flame Strike, and then all you've done is even the board. Like, yes, you probably gained a lot of card advantage, but maybe Flame Strike is just too slow. But now you Flame Strike, and then you play your Volcanic Drake. Wow, that's very exciting.
Blackrock Mountain, a Hearthstone adventure!